She needed to turn some numbers, and then she also got. It sounds like they had in state.
Well, that's great. Did she do well in her SAT?
Yeah, she did really well. She didn't take the SAT. She took the
Yeah.
ACTs.
Okay. Sounds good.
She got the equivalent of like I think about a 1480 or something.
That's great.
The SATs.
Well, it beats my 650.
Yeah.
It was different. Yeah.
Don't you get about 800 for signing your name?
Not back then. What are you doing, Jay? Don't mess with the flag.
The questionnaire is not required. The other people said it was.
Yeah.
You hear me? Bill?
Yeah, I did. And then and wrap up. And he's here. So
I get around to be here next week. At least I had work.
Yeah. We've got notice that she got accepted to app.
So did Anna.
Well, I guess
Yeah,
could
she
be.
got accepted to App State today, and she got accepted to Clemson.
She did finally hear back.
Yeah, last week, and she got accepted to Penn State too. I think I told you that.
Yeah. And then
where's, I think,
What's that?
where's the mom and dad?
It's just a little school up north.
Yeah. But where is?
Oh, really? In Pennsylvania? It's in the dead center of the state college, Pennsylvania.
Like north of Harrisburg.
Yeah, like a little northwest of Harrisburg. Definitely north, but a little further west.
Are we ready?
Old Harrisburg. Been up there. Yes, sir.
What were you there for?
We're not missing
It's like the
one.
club.
Isn't that Ivy League?
No, you're thinking of Penn.
What are they doing over there?
Cleaning up a lot.
We went up to Hershey one year.
Oh, yeah.
Drove up all the way.
That's right. You told me you went
One
there.
day, Harrisburg. Harrisburg wasn't.
Harrisburg's like the cloudiest place, and yeah, it's not a nice place. That's the capital.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, it's like we didn't go with Hershey.
I'd like to call,
Yeah.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Highlands Town Board of Commissioners for December the 8th, 2022. And as always, we begin with the moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. So would you join me now in a moment of silence? Thank you. Will you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item, number 3, statement of conflict of interest. If any members has a conflict of interest on any of the issues tonight, they should disclose those conflicts. And Mr. Hay.
Yes, sir. I mentioned that Withers and Ravenel did my solid waste work, so I've had a business relationship with them for years.
Okay. Thank you. All right. let us now move on to item number 4, and that is public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please come to our podium, state your name, and we'll be open for the public comment section. We'd appreciate you keeping your remarks to within about 3 minutes or so. So I'm going to throw the floor open now for public comment. I see that we don't have anyone who would like to make a public comment tonight. So let me now move on to the next item, and that is to review and approve the agenda. And I will start out. I know our town manager has a request for an addition to the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, under number 16, financial matters, if I could add a budget amendment for a police department shed.
Okay. Any other changes?
Are we going to act? We're not going to act on 12, 13, and 14, are we, the leases?
No,
Okay, great.
we will take no final action.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, do I have a second? You do have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say signify by saying aye.
No.
Thank you. Okay. The next item would be the approval of the November 17th special meeting minutes. Do we have any changes, corrections, additions to those minutes?
I move to be approved.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. The next item would be the report, starting with the mayor's report. So let me just go over a few things, and I've been talking with the town manager today, and he'll be covering some other things. First of all, the EV charging stations, we're still in discussions with EnviroSpark about some of the technical requirements for that program, and hopefully those will be resolved and we will get that back on the agenda. Other thing, at the last meeting, we had a presentation by Alex Stillwell on the 106 sidewalk, and I indicated that I would start contacting the parties involved if there's any requirements for easements and so forth. I have started doing that, and one is a homeowners association, and just a preliminary presentation. It was they were open to the proposal, but we will continue to work with that homeowners association because there's some procedures that they would have to follow in granting the easement. Also talked with another property owner today concerning I think piping or modifying the creek, Munger Creek on their property, and they're open to that too. So we'll continue that dialogue and continue meeting with the property owners that are involved and give them more specific detail, and then we'll report back to you, and hopefully we can get a definitive report to you in January. Josh, is that about correct? Okay. Okay, and then in conjunction with this, I went to a workshop that the DOT had on planning for trails and sidewalks. I took notes. Like many things in government, and I speak for ours too, sometimes things get rather complicated for the amount of money that you have to acquire. But I attended that meeting, and then at first of this next week, there's another government group that's going to be doing a workshop on trails. Since this would involve a type of greenway trail, I will attend that meeting also. And then finally, I was approached by the director of housing for Macon County, and they're trying to form a committee of government leaders and folks to address issues concerning housing in the county. And I asked Commissioner Hayne if he'd be willing to represent, the town on that committee, and I appreciate him agreeing to do so. So he'll be representing the town as that committee gets underway this year. So that's all that I have, and I'm going to now turn it over to the commissioners for their reports and committee reports. Do we have any reports?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say this is my third year I've been here. I've enjoyed it. It's an honor. I'm getting to know everyone better. There have been some disagreements about public records, but everything I ever requested has been honored, and I appreciate that. And I have mentioned to you that I'm concerned that I'm not getting the same legal advice that others are getting, and hope we can address that in the future.
Okay. We'll continue that dialogue and discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Any other reports from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll turn it over to our town manager, Josh Ward, for his report.
Well, I would like to announce that after 3.5 years as the assistant planning director, Michael Mathis has been promoted to the planning director. He has also got his North Carolina certified zoning administrator status. Michael has done a great job over the 3.5 years. He's been thrown into a lot of scenarios that a young planning director typically doesn't have to go through. He's took the head of the comprehensive plan as well as the ADA plan and done well with that. Have been doing very well with the planning board and zoning board and the training that they've been going through here lately. So I want to say, thank you to Michael for his work and look forward to working with him in the future. The mayor brought up the EV charging stations, and ViroSpark has been back and forth with Lamar and I about having an on-site meeting to go over what is going to be required transformer wise, electrical wise. It looks like next Friday, the 16th, I believe it is, will be our meeting with them. And then we'll have a report in January on what's required and if that's going to work or not in those locations. The paving has been completed. It was budgeted this year. It turned out very nice. Have a number of overlays on existing paved areas and had several gravel roads that have been paved. Turned out very nice. I think the mayor has traveled all of them and has approved of them. He was excited every one that was completed. He was making sure that he took a tour. And also the sidewalks will be the next on the plan for Bryson's to start. They were the one that got the contract on the sidewalks as well. And I think, Lamar, if I'm not mistaken, they'll start the 64 sidewalk first.
That's correct. Can I just go back to the paving here a second?
Yes.
Are we lining it, or is the state going to do that first?
Lamar, do you want to discuss the striping?
Oak and First. That's the only ones that we had to have. They restrap. We're probably the ones who contract.
About that in front of the pistol.
Okay, I don't know if it.
On the street that hasn't been put back.
That was under construction when the state was striping the street and blocked off, so we couldn't do it. So
I understand that, but I mean,
now it's
now,
either up to us or them.
Naomi, I heard that they wanted to work on a drop off at the front, and they were going to come to the town with a plan. So that's my understanding.
because they're gonna have kids being dropped off there now.
Correct.
Because
And
Daycare is gonna go in the basement.
handicapped people and all that. They wanted a way to drop people off. That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if they had a plan or anything.
Well, I don't know that they do, but I heard they were working on it.
For a loading zone or something.
We haven't seen a plan
Right.
yet.
And Lamar, let me just confirm, because I've had people ask me this before too, like on Colosage and other places. They want to know why we don't stripe those roads. And it's my understanding, if you're going to stripe in the center line, you've got to have clear passage for two cars without any stopping or negotiation, correct?
That's correct. It's not. It's that, wow.
Okay.
I think we have some road streets around here that are state roads. Chestnut is a prime example, but you can't find a center line on and nobody seems to know where it is. So
Yeah.
you're dodging cars to go down the middle of the road.
State is not.
I know, it's the state. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we can contact them on that. Actually, I talked to
I think
a
going to
representative
the
this week.
school is the same way. You know, because as you told me, Lamar, the stripes don't last as long as they used to because it took the lead out of the paint, right? So maybe they're still on the old schedule.
I'm not sure. I know they're having a hard time finding stripers too,
Is that
like
right?
we have in the past year and a half or so. I will say that we had discussed crosswalks. Commissioner Dodson had brought that up months ago. We finally were able to work out a meeting, Lamar and I, with the state division that does the thermo striping for the crosswalks. So they met a couple days ago with us. They took a map that we had prepared and went around town. We had marked on there their crosswalks, the DOT crosswalks, as well as all the town crosswalks. And we explained to them that the board would like to see all those crosswalks done in the new standard, which is the hashed marks, and done thermo. That way they would last, 3 or 4 years before they had to be striped again. He said they did have a plan where they would come in and do the striping of the crosswalks, and we simply had to pay for the material. So they went all around town and looked at the map, and they're working on an estimate right now, and they'll be getting back with us. And we just have to do a budget amendment, which I think is a really good deal to have them to do it. Again, it's been really hard to find those folks out there to stripe, especially thermal, but they have the equipment to do that.
So they're paid by the state, but we pay for the materials?
It would be the DOT actually doing the work. We would simply pay for the material. So they felt like they could do that on the majority of the crosswalks that they looked at on the plan. But they said that they would look at all of them, which they did that day, and that they would get back with us with a quote.
So even ones that are on our streets?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what it sounded like. It sounded promising. So we were excited about that. And then they'd all be uniformed. And we told them that, we'd had the parallel stripes across Main Street, and that we had been painting those. But what happened was the paint is getting hard to find. The paint is hard to apply, has to be down at like 75 degrees. So you have to block traffic, which is typically in the summertime. It's just been very difficult. It doesn't last very long. So we asked them to even look at those new stripes that are up there on Main Street to see if they could hash those off. So they were going to look at all that and get back with us hopefully pretty soon on that. And we'll bring that to the board once we have an estimate. Also, the last thing, Town Hall will be closed Friday the 23rd, Monday the 26th, December, and January 2nd for Christmas and New Year's holiday.
Okay. All right. The next item, 8, is the consent agenda. Do we have any questions concerning the consent agenda that was in your packet?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, item number 9, the 2021-22 audit presentation by Travis Keever, who is with Gould, Killian, and CPA Group. Travis, welcome.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Mayor and board. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. I think I've got some slides that are coming up here in a second. We, on November the 30th, we finalized the audit report for the town for the year ending June 30, 2022. I think you all have a copy of it. Now the hard copies just came out. We issued 2 reports that are included within that financial statement. I'll just describe them. You don't have to turn to them at the moment. The first report's in the very front of the statement. It's a report on the financial statements of the town. Happy to report that we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. This means that we believe the financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It's very similar to a report that a business or a nonprofit may get. Basically just says in our opinion, the amounts showing up in the financial statements are materially correct in accordance with GAAP. The second report that we issue is in the back of the statement. It's one that's specific to governmental accounting. It's a report on internal control and compliance with state laws and regulations. This is also known as a yellow book report. Again, a specific government auditing standards requires this. You won't find it in the financial statements of a business or most nonprofits. Now, as part of this, we do review your internal controls, but we don't perform a full audit of internal controls or a full audit of compliance of laws and regulations. We review your controls to the extent necessary to plan and perform our financial statement audit, which means we focus mostly on internal controls that would impact the numbers in the financial statements. We do that in a number of ways. We test a sample of expenditures to make sure that purchase order policies are followed, the expenditures are approved by authorized individuals. The budgetary authority exists for the transaction. The invoices are coded to the correct budget code. We test a sample of payroll transactions to make sure that employees that get paid are actual employees of the town and that they're being paid at an approved rate. And we conduct walkthroughs and interviews with key personnel in the finance department and others in the town to ensure that a system of checks and balances appear to be in place as it relates to the controls over the town's financial information. Now, as part of that report, we reported 2 internal control findings. I'm going to.
Won't you move that over,
Just a
just the whole thing, so you can see it too?
We reported 2 internal control findings, 1 a material weakness and 1 a significant deficiency, and I'll describe those in more detail here in just a second. And then, of course, this was our first year auditing the town. It's always a big undertaking, changing auditors, as Rebecca can attest, but I'd like to thank her and all the staff in the finance department for their work. Josh, everybody at town hall were super accommodating, got us everything we asked for in a timely manner, made it as smooth a process as they could make it. Let's flip on to the next one. So this next slide is called Financial Performance Indicators of Concern. This is a term that's been used by the local government commission the last couple of years. Every year when we submit the audit, we have to fill out a data sheet with different financial statistics and different information about the results of the audit. And then that sheet basically spits out what they call financial performance indicators of concern, which I've listed there. I'm required now by the LGC to cover these with you all in a public meeting. The material weakness and significant deficiency in control, those 2 separate issues, are both automatically financial performance indicators of concern. The material weakness relates to a correction of a prior period error. The town in previous years has reported a liability in its electric fund for a coal ash settlement. Your previous audit firm, I think, probably recommended that liability be reported. It's related to the amount of money that Duke Energy is having to pay to settle their coal ash cleanup. That liability is with Duke Energy, not the town. In our view, based on our interpretation of accounting standards, it was not correct to have that shown as a liability of the town. That's essentially just a cost increase to Duke Energy, which is being passed along to their customers the same way any other cost would be. So we corrected that error in the financial statements this year. So audit standards require that we report that as a material weakness, but it's corrected. It won't be an issue going forward. The second one is a significant deficiency in control. This came out of some of those procedures that I listed out. We noticed that segregation of duties related to the payroll function probably needed to be tightened up just a little bit. There was 1 employee that was responsible for a lot of different parts of that process, from the human resource part to the entering new employees, changing pay rates, processing payroll. And so I think Rebecca's attested to us that the procedures have already been changed, put in place to alleviate that. We'll audit it again next year, but it sounds like that shouldn't be an issue next year either. So that's good news also. The third one was related to transfers out of your electric fund. The transfers were used for sources other than electric system capital improvements. So the LGC has taken the position that reserves from an enterprise fund shouldn't be used for anything other than the operating or capital needs in that fund. So a transfer that's coming out of an enterprise fund, the electric fund in this case, should really only be used for a capital project that'll benefit that particular fund. They're doing this with some pushing and prodding from the General Assembly as far as taking a look at these transfers. I would encourage you in the coming years, and this is obviously something everybody that has an electric fund uses the money that it kicks off to do other things. They are starting to take a look at that. I would encourage you in the coming years to start looking at ways through, if you're funding a water project, adjusting the rates in both funds, where both funds are self-sustaining, essentially. That's where they're going with this, in my view, at the state level. And it would be easier to kind of get there on your own than have them just kind of pop up one year and say this is no longer allowed. So just keep that in mind. I don't think it's an issue that's an emergency or anything like that. It is something to keep in mind as you're doing your budgeting, though. that these are getting a lot of scrutiny. That scrutiny's increased quite a bit over the last several years. It's probably going to continue to increase, and eventually they're going to say these transfers are no longer allowed. So I would just keep that in mind. The next slide is a governmental fund revenue summary. This includes your general fund and your fire department fund. Like most towns in North Carolina, ad valorem taxes makes up a big chunk of your revenue at almost 3 million. You've got local option sales tax at 1.5 million, fire tax at 1.1 million, and intergovernmental revenue, which represents franchise tax, ABC store distributions, Macon County culture grant contributions, things like that, makes up another million or so. This is the exact same slide, just from the expenditure side. And again, also like most towns in North Carolina, public safety is your largest percentage. That's the police and fire department. That's 30% of the town's expenditures at $2 million. General government, 1.8 million. And then of course, culture and rec and transportation, both a little over $1 million. And then debt service on the fire department debt is there 658,000. Let me scroll one more. This is a summary of your general fund balance. It's over the last 4 years. You kind of barely see it at the bottom there. It's 2019, 2020, 21, and 22. You can see there's a general kind of gradual upward trajectory, which is always good. And your fund balance is growing at a kind of a slow, steady pace. The blue line is total fund balance, of course, which is up in the general fund to a little over 4.5 million this year. The gray number is available fund balance, which takes your total fund balance and subtracts out some things that essentially the state says you can't include in your available funds, mostly receivables that you haven't collected yet, and things like prepaids and inventory. That's a statutory calculation though that the LGC wants to see every year. And again, your available fund balance is moving relatively proportional to your total fund balance, which is kind of what you'd expect. So no worries there. This next graph shows fund balance of as a percentage of your net expenditures. The state local government commission uses this as a measure of fiscal health for a district. You all have fund balance available representing about 70% of your annual general fund expenditures. So that basically means if all revenue quit coming in, you could cover about 9 months worth of expenses in the general fund. The red line is, and that's held pretty steady since 2019, which is good. It's nice and consistent. That's what you want to see. The red line, municipal average, those are other governments in your population group. And you can see they're more around 50 to 60%. You guys are at 70%. So compared to your peers, you're, a notch above them. The LGC, they basically say 8% is a cause for serious concern. That's 1 month of expenditures. Those financial performance indicators of concern I mentioned earlier, if you drop below 25%, that pops up as one of those. So you all are at 70%. So that's about 3 times what they would say is concerning. So I think that's just to say the town has a very healthy fund balance, which I'm sure you all already know. And this next slide is just a summary of one of your enterprise funds. This is the water and sewer fund. This 2022 compared to 2021, your working capital, pretty consistent. That's current assets over current liabilities. That's an indication of the town's ability or that fund's ability to meet its current obligations. About $2.3 million. Your unrestricted net position, which is your reserves in that fund that are not represented by capital assets. You expect that to be close to working capital, and it is. You get an operating loss in that fund of $439,000. That's mainly because there's about $850,000 or $900,000 in depreciation being taken in that fund. If you add that back, then obviously that becomes income. Received $840,000 of transfer from other funds. I think most of that came from the electric fund. The water fund generated $718,000 in cash flows from operating activities, which of course can be used for debt service, capital improvements, things like that. And you had a net increase in cash of $275,000. And this is the same information just for the electric fund. Again, a ton of working capital and net position of about 8.7 million. Operating income this year of 2.1 million. You transferred 872,000 of that to other funds. The enterprise fund, the electric fund generated about 2.5 million in cash from the operating activities. And then of course you transferred 872 out, which left about a 1.6 million increase in cash. And that is all I had. So I'm happy to take any questions anybody has. And again, thank you for allowing us to work with the town this year. We really enjoyed it.
Go ahead.
We just adopted a policy to meet all of the obligations that we made before. And what came to mind was the debt service, to the state revolving loan fund and our coverage. Did you calculate what our coverage factor was?
We did not. That is actually one of the things that's automatically calculated on that data input sheet that I referenced.
Right.
So
I'd be curious what that is. If it's
Yeah,
over
I can forward that information to Rebecca.
Okay.
She'll have it handy.
Thank you.
The reserve funds, and you were comparing our 70% to the 60% in groups of towns comparable to Highlands.
Yep.
I was in a workshop just this past year. The tendency for smaller towns is to carry a higher reserve fund
It is.
than larger municipalities.
Correct. Yeah, it is. The numbers, the raw numbers are smaller in a smaller town. So
Okay.
a big expenditure, a big unexpected expenditure that pops up in a smaller town as a percentage of your budget can be more significant than, for a town the size of Asheville, for example.
Okay.
So yeah, for that reason, smaller towns do tend to carry quite a bit more fund balance.
And if, after looking at this, if we have more questions, you'd be available to.
Yeah, absolutely. Rebecca's got my contact information. We can
Okay.
call, do a conference call, email. I'm easy to get a hold of.
Okay.
I do have one question. You made a comment about the legislature looking hard at transfers out of the electrical fund. Who's pushing that?
These
In
are,
your best guesstimate?
my best guess is it's some committee that looks at local government finance. I don't know who it is. There's no legislation actually in process right now that I'm aware of. The local government commission is getting calls from the committees that oversee them, asking them to take a look at things like that. As an example, if you all don't do this that I've noticed, if you transfer money out of your water and sewer fund to subsidize a general fund, for example, they've made it where you're no longer eligible for state revolving funds. So they're starting to put little thing, and that just came about in the last 2 or 3 years. So, and of course there's billions of dollars out there right now in that state revolving fund because of all the ARPA money that came down. So there's a lot of governments that in the past have used their water and sewer fund to subsidize the general fund. They're now having to scramble to find a way to pay all that back to have access to the state revolving fund. They haven't taken measures like that with an electric fund yet.
They also are investing in support of city groups that are already involved.
Yeah.
So like last year, we had to do that response as we were over because we had transferred. When we did that response, we had to explain that we were not an electric city. So therefore, we're not really regulated by state statute as of now. But we know that that's probably where it's going to come from.
Correct. Yeah. Some of the big electric co-ops in the state, it's just flat out illegal to transfer money out of an electric fund.
I was wondering if there's any perception that the utility companies are pushing this.
I wouldn't know about that. Not that I know of. Who knows? With all the lobbyists, it's hard to say, but I don't know.
Okay.
So and this is looking down the road.
Sure.
If we've got this high reserve fund in the electric, that needs to come down, but then because we can't subsidize the water and sewer, something would have to give where the rates on the water and sewer would have to reflect the capital needs that have to be made.
Correct.
Is that-
You've got capital needs in the electric fund. I suspect you guys have reserves in there to meet those at this point. Water and sewer, maybe not. So what they're looking for, obviously, for practical purposes, a lot of the people that get electric service and a lot of the ones that get water service are going to be the same people, right? What they're looking for, although that mix is not going to be 100% pure. And so what they're looking for, set the rate in the electric fund, what it costs to actually deliver the electric service, set the rate in the water fund, what it actually costs to deliver the water service. And that includes, future capital needs and debt service and things like that. So,
Well, and I don't want to get defensive about this.
Yeah, no.
But, if you look at other utilities like Duke and Haywood and everything, we're right in the middle with the rates. And I've
Right.
always viewed that as almost like we're kind of like not a rural co-op, we're a town co-op,
yeah,
which has helped us keep tax rates down and
for
a
sure.
lot of things. But
For sure.
what you're telling us, Travis, is we need to start rethinking this whole model as we
Yeah,
go
and
into
it-
the next several
And it
years.
may be where, public perception needs to be, you get a lower electricity rate. Because, you get your electricity from a town co-op and maybe the tax rate or water rate or what have you, moves a little bit more. Where it's really just give and take, right? Like the total amount of dollars coming into the town seem to be sufficient. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. It's just rearranging which buckets those dollars come into.
Raise the tax rate to pay for projects.
I think you could look at how your administrative costs are allocated, and maybe you could allocate that to the different funds, and then that would make it look like you're not doing so well. So
That is one way to do it. It's, in my experience, it's hard to allocate enough administrative costs to an electric fund
But
to
I know-
cover
I
up
know,
all that
but you
profit.
could-
But yeah,
you-
no, your point's well taken, though. That is something that should be done, is taking a look at
Right.
the administrative cost allocation and making sure there's no more room to, kind of tack more onto that.
Josh, while I've got Travis here, I'm gonna bring up the other fund, sanitation, that we've, been challenged to balance out over the last few years. And I've been told that it's possible to move that to the general fund.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah, that's actually more common to see the sanitation, the refuse and recycling collection. I assume that's mostly what sanitation does. It's more common, I would say, at least in the towns I deal with, to see that as part of the general.
Would you
fund.
continue to charge rates?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And you even still set the rates at, what you would kind of expect it to cost to deliver the service, just like anything else the town provides. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with just moving that into the general fund. I think Josh and I talked about that.
We did.
Briefly. Yeah, that's, if this was the town of Travis, I would do that. It'd just be easier.
Any other questions? Travis here. Hearing none. Thank you, Travis, for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, the Ross preliminary and final plat approval, Michael Mathis.
Thank you, Mayor. So John Strong and Eduardo Moreira submitted an application to the Planning Department concerning a property subdivision at 1921 Franklin Road. Since then, the applicants have retracted their offer to purchase the property. However, the property owner, Mr. Ross, still wants to proceed with the subdivision request. Parcel is comprised of 2.84 acres and is located in the R2 zoning district. According to the Unified Development Ordinance 8.2.1 dimensional standards, the minimum lot size for property in the R2 zoning district and the critical area of the town's watershed is 1 acre. When referencing the preliminary and final plat prepared by Appalachian Surveying Company and subject to approval, the newly formed properties will consist of 2 lots that exceed 1 acre. Tract 1 is 1 acre exactly. Tract 2 is 1.84 acres. Tract 1 is accessible off Webmont Road and Tract 2 is accessible off US Highway 64. According to the town's Public Works Director, Lamar Nix, both tracts have access to town water, sewer, and electricity. The Town of Highlands Planning Board reviewed this application on November 21st, 2022. The recommendation is to approve the preliminary and final plat, and the staff recommendation is to also approve the preliminary and final plat as submitted. I also have Mr. Ross and his wife here tonight for if you have any questions.
Any question, Michael?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Got a move to approve?
Second.
Second. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the next item will be the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan adoption. We had a presentation last month at our board meeting, and Michael Mathis, would you explain what we need to do?
Yes, sir. So during last month's meeting, JMT Engineering presented the 2022 Town of Highlands ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. The purpose of this document is to, and I quote, promote greater accessibility to town facilities and services through the identification of existing barriers. Additionally, the North Carolina Department of Transportation requires municipalities with 50 or more employees to complete the self-evaluation and transition plan process. The town signed a contract with JMT on April 26, 2022 for their professional assistance in developing this plan. Since then, the team for JMT, along with town staff, has worked diligently towards achieving that goal. Also, for your consideration and approval is a resolution to the ADA plan, which is the one that Candace referred to last month at last month's meeting. And the recommendation tonight is to approve the resolution and ADA plan as submitted.
Okay. Josh and Michael, would y'all like to just kind of update? I think y'all have already started the meeting with folks about how we approach complying with some of the recommendations.
I did mention to the Department of Transportation, companies they use for the truncated domes on some of the crosswalks where we either don't have a truncated dome or we have inefficient truncated domes, and they were not really helpful. They said they weren't, any particular contractor they use. They do have some that are, if you were going to, redo the crosswalks like they did when they resurfaced, there are some that go down in the concrete, some that are stick-on. We've popped several of the stick-ons off in snows when we're scraping the sidewalks, so those don't seem to work as well, but that's something that we'll be looking for as we come into the new budget year and try to get some estimates on those, because I think that's the low-hanging fruit that we thought we could correct pretty quickly.
Yes.
Michael, you may have also looked into some other.
There are some other ones in there. I'm not exactly sure on all of them. Obviously, I haven't studied over it, but one item was that the biggest thing is getting the information out for people on who to contact if they have a problem. This is something we'll post at town hall. We can post at the rec park with Lester, put on the town website, and even run it in the paper maybe a few times. Just do items like that. That way, if anybody does have a problem, they'll know that.
So basically, we're already beginning to take action to address the things in the plan.
Yes.
Which is good. Okay. And we need a motion to adopt the resolution
So moved. Mr.
The
Mayor.
resolution and plan.
and. plan.
Second.
Okay.
So that the plan, and when we adopt the plan, that adopts the verbiage that puts you as the administrator, and what was the other thing? There was two things in there, wasn't there?
The ADA coordinator.
Yeah.
And there was a policy or
Oh,
a policy for complaining. or
That's right.
something?
yes, the two
That's right.
policy documents that are grievance policy is one, and then Gibby, do you have the plan in front of you?
That's right.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, one of them is a grievance and one of them is
Coordinator.
notice of Americans with Disability Act,
Yes.
so the notice. Okay,
Yes.
those are the only other two things.
Yes, I
And as
believe.
they were presented in the plan is what we're passing.
Yes.
So when we approve the plan and the resolution, then everything's inclusive.
Yes.
Yes. And we have a motion on the floor and a
A second.
second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Michael. Okay, the next item, and that'll be Jay Coward, item number 12, that HLC Tower Attachment Lease. We have 3 leases listed on the agenda tonight, and I've asked Josh and Jay to kind of explain the procedure that we have to follow when we approve these contracts. So Josh, would you mind going over that at this time?
Sure. So Gibby Shaheen, our town clerk, informed me that anytime that a lease is looked at before it's adopted, there has to be a 30-day public notice that is posted that describes the terms of that lease. And so tonight or whenever the terms of each of these leases are agreed upon, they will need to be published in the paper, get public notice of the terms of that lease before the board can then approve the lease.
So is this prior to getting comments from the other side?
I think what needs to happen is we've talked about these several times. Each of the other, parts of these leases need to be given a copy of the lease.
The parties?
And today, the parties, and today, I know the WHLC lease, I submitted that to, and as soon as Jay got it to me, I submitted it to their attorney to look at. So they were going to review that. So yes, there'll definitely be a period of time when they were going to get back with us with comments and concerns they have. So I would say I don't know how it's going to work with the other ones. I know with WHLC, they're going to be looking at that and getting back with us on things that we may have to negotiate, or we'll have to negotiate. Then once those negotiations have had, both parties agree, then that's when the 30-day public notice would need to be submitted. The ham radio may not be as bad at it, because the board has already adopted that. It's basically going over the verbiage, and I'll let Jay kind of go over what he's prepared for the board tonight.
Well, so I agree with Josh that we're gonna have to have a 30-day waiting period so the public can smoke it over. The last time we met, I suggested that we have a termination clause in the leases that enable the town to exit, and you asked for me to propose some reasons for why that might be advisable. So I have proposed 3 and have put those into the 3 different leases and highlighted them. They're all the same. 2 of them are formatted a little bit differently, but the substance of them is the same. So do you have any questions?
I haven't
Do
had
we
a
have
chance
to-
to read it.
Yeah. Can we put that up on the screen? That highlighted section.
Gibby, do you have a?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just got these this afternoon.
If you
See the
take
highlighted section.
the first one, it'll be on page 7, Gibby. Yeah.
Yeah, they see, Jay, they were not highlighted on mine.
There it is.
It's like-
What page is that?
Page 7.
In which lease are we on?
Well, actually, that one does not appear to be the same as the one I've got. But
That's from your email. I don't know.
It's
Which one are you on?
it's paragraph 21.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
This
21.
is page 8. This is page 8. I'm sorry.
Which lease are we at now? We at the
This
W.
is the Charisma Radio Corporation.
Okay.
And can you read what are the conditions that you've listed?
There's paragraph 21 is optional termination, and I added E by lessor. That is, the lease may be terminated the following ways: by the lessor if in its sole discretion, 1, the purpose for which the lease has been entered into has ceased to exist; 2, that the continuing the lease no longer serves the interest of the public; or 3, the parties are unable to cooperate in a manner that serves their mutual interests.
Okay.
So we're going to send these to the other parties to review, and Josh will bring them back when he has a recommendation. Is that right, Mr. Mayor?
I believe that's the
Yeah,
procedure
that
now.
would be the way.
All right.
And I know we're kind of jumping on the agenda, but they're so related, I think it warrants this. After the meeting on last month, we did not have, any information that had been asked of the county attorney. We still don't, we're still waiting on it. But it was pointed out that in order for the chamber to maintain insurance and so forth, they had to have some type of document because the lease was up. So we drew up, Jay, would you explain what we did to address that problem?
It was called a holdover agreement, and basically it just acknowledged the fact that the lease had expired and that the chamber was holding over, still in possession. And the law is that when a lessee continues to occupy the premises and continues to pay rent, that it's a holdover and it's under the same terms and conditions as the written lease until a new lease is formed. So it carries on through as long as both parties are okay with it. You just basically say, we're going to continue this lease as a holdover agreement. So I drafted a real short half-page document and gave it to Josh, and I assumed that everybody signed it.
We
So-
did, and that allows them to continue their insurance in effect and
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
It's no problem.
And I think I even quoted a statute and a case that stood for that.
Okay, so we're in a situation with these leases then that actually we need to just simply now forward this to the parties involved and let them review it and come back at our next board meeting with any concerns they have and then move forward after that. Is that the way this should be done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which means that seems to me these agenda items on the leases, we should just move right through them and say that that's in the works. We'll put them on hold until we hear back from the other parties. Is everybody in agreement?
So are we saying that we essentially agree with these leases and we're presenting them to the three different parties, or we're going to continue to talk about it once we hear, I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about it once we hear back from the parties, but
Once we
are
hear
they
back,
to assume that this is their lease?
Well, he might have a valid comment that Josh agrees with and he wants to alter it. So that's my understanding was.
we will enter a discussion at the next meeting over any differences or items in the lease. Okay. Are we in agreement? This is.
Well,
I think the board has to agree that these are the leases they want to send on to the
Okay.
parties.
well, without knowing the opinion of the county,
County attorney.
Yeah.
this says they don't know anything.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what we want.
Okay,
So that one we don't send.
all right, we'll put it on hold.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Find out what you can and can't do before you give them a lease that we may have to
Okay.
change.
And they're not here tonight.
No, and I spoke to Kay though before the meeting and she is working on that.
Right, but until we know.
Yeah, that's what I told. I said, until we know that information, there's really,
Since the holdover is taking care of their concerns
Yeah.
about insurance,
we
Then
can't
we'll-
move forward there.
do it to the HLC and the Mr. Spencer.
Okay, so should we just go through each one then and make a vote on sending it to the leasee for
We
their
could.
review?
We could.
Here, I tell you what needs to be in the notice, just so you'll know. You have to say that it has to be done 30 days from the, so it has to describe the property being listed, leased or rented, state the annual lease, rental or payments, and announce your intent to authorize it. So whatever y'all decide after that, when we have to publicly notice it.
Right.
we'll all
Correct.
arrange
Right.
it.
That's what we're gonna do.
So we're just sending this on to the other party for their comments so that we don't advertise something that they're not going to agree to.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. So on the WHLC tower lease, do I have
So
an
moved.
agreement that we send it forward? Got a second?
Check.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. And then let's now move to the next item, the Helm radio. Do we have a motion to send that forward to,
So moved.
okay? Second, all in favor? Thank you. And then on the chamber lease, basically, we're putting that on hold until further information. Have a motion to do that
So moved.
in a second? All in favor? Thank you.
Just Josh, one question.
Yes. Josh?
Josh, the contract that we approved to make repairs to the tower, there may be opportunities to trade out the nuts or mount the ham radio. I think you ought to look at that and bring that back too. It would make sense for one contractor to do all the repairs and all the work at the same time, not at our expense, at the expense of the other parties. When you
Matt?
discuss,
Matt, can you give us an update on the tower repairs?
Yeah, spoke to them after I did. That's my intent. I asked,
great,
I 30 years to do all the work and tell us how much it would cost.
perfect. That's great. Thank you.
It makes sense while they're on the tower, change out 4 bolts and then pay $10, whatever.
Right.
Just seeing more economical that way, it might make sense.
All right. Thank you.
So I'm gonna that way.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one
Yes, sir.
other question of Rebecca, I guess. You mentioned that we have to have 30 days. Once this first 30-day period is over and we decide, is there another 30 days between that and the final?
It does not say that. It just says no, property may be, hold on. Property may be rented or leased only pursuant to a resolution of the council authorizing the execution of the lease or rental agreement adopted at a regular council meeting upon 30 days notice. So it means you have to advertise it 30 days and then you can do it. But in the notice, sorry, you have to describe the property, which would probably be like a MISGIS, whatever. Yeah. Stating annual rental or lease payments and announcing your intent to authorize that lease.
That would be the negotiated lease. If you intend to change these leases to happen, I don't think this right now would constitute the notice.
Correct.
You have to have a
No,
negotiated contract that both parties agree on. Then
You're gonna
you
determine,
then you get-
both parties have to determine the lease. We don't need to worry about other.
Okay,
Right.
we're good.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I also think that once we put it out there for that 30-day period, if there is comment, it's like a public comments, what it's asking for, just like when you pass an ordinance. You have to have public comment. If there are changes to be made, you make the changes. You don't need to notify, you don't need to have another 30-day notice.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we move to item number 15. And that is an ABC store proposal. And we have Kevin Benson, I think, on video, and Steve Mater, who is the director or chairman of the board of the ABC board, is here to present this proposal. Steve?
Thank you.
He's on.
He's on. Okay. Good evening, commissioners. I'm here with other members of the board to discuss an ABC store proposal. And that is, we have been in conversation with the town, couple of officials about relocating the store to the old fire station. We have talked to engineers, we've talked to architects, we've talked to a various number of people about the feasibility of it, and it appears to be a feasible thing. It will give us the opportunity to relocate. We currently are paying rent at the Highlands Plaza, and that would afford us the opportunity to be away from that rent. We also have funds set aside for this purpose. So the proposal is to proceed with this in searching out a contractor to get an idea of what is involved with that. We do have an architect on standby right now to prepare the elevation change that would be fairly minor in that. We feel like this is going to give us an opportunity, be more user-friendly to not only the customers, but also to the employees there. Right now, we have some constraints there that we need to be able to deal with. So, questions?
What part of the fire department would you use it?
We would use the fire department that is contiguous to one another. There is a separate section that it houses the ladder truck, I believe.
Yeah, hook and ladder.
Yeah, we would not utilize that. We would.
So it would use it like where because that's a pretty big area, right? I mean, like where the bays are, where the fire trucks are parked.
We would use where the bays are. That would be essentially the store itself. On either side would be assessed for, or excuse me, set up for inventory, both receiving and distribution, because right now there's a bit of a concern as far as distribution to the mixed beverage customers.
So when does your current lease run out?
That's still to be decided, but it looks like the lease is set up to run out in 28, although we have been in touch with the landlord, and the landlord is amenable to working with us on this.
So it's, I guess my concern is the comprehensive plan, Josh. The comprehensive plan had two ideas about how the property might be used, and just seems to me we ought to take our time and look at the entire tract, how we're going to use the entire tract, and how we could accommodate the ABC store and all of the property. And I think we're going to do an evaluation of the Playhouse too, and what the future of the Playhouse was. Is it feasible, not feasible? How is it all going to be used? What's a future site for town hall? I would like to, I'm not opposed to looking at it, but I'm not in favor of proceeding today. I think we need to look at a bigger plan for the whole, was it 5 acres, Josh? The whole town site,
I don't know the exact amount.
I think that includes town hall. Oh, it's a big piece of property.
Let me go over some history. And I appreciate your concern, Commissioner Haynes. I remember when Eric's mother was the chairman of the board, she came before this board with the idea and request to allow a kind of a building reserve fund to be set up. That must have been now almost a decade ago. And that is built up to where the opportunity to relocate because you're running out of space. This is a way of doing that at a pretty effective cost, as opposed to trying to rebuild an entire building. I remember before I was mayor, one time when they were leaving the ABC store, which is now the current police department, there was this idea of acquiring a property across on Maple next to Mill Creek. But the logistics of building the delivery sites in the back and everything was going to make that building cost a fortune that we'd still be paying for now if it had been built. So, the benefit of bringing it back to the town property and within a town building means we aren't paying rent, and those savings will go to the town and the nonprofits that you have to distribute money to. Would you mind commenting on that?
You're correct. We have a substantial amount of money set aside in a cash reserve. We also have money that essentially the profits after distribution that is being dedicated to that reserve. The cost to do this can't be exact, but the cost to do this not only will be revenue neutral, but it'll be beneficial to the town going forward. There'll be a substantial amount of distributions that heretofore are not being made because they're being set aside in this capital reserve account. So we believe that any renovation cost will not be a burden to the town. And upon completion of that project and satisfaction of any funds that we might need to secure will be will be short-lived, and the money will start funding the town's general fund.
I'd like to ask Kevin, he's on conference, to just talk about the challenges right now of operating in the space that you're in as we approach that lease renewal time, and some of the new things in ABC sales and marketing that you're going to have to deal with in the future.
Well, as our, excuse me, as our mixed beverages increased exponentially over the last 3 years, we have been forced to carry extra stock in the warehouse, and we just don't have the space for it any longer. Some of that overflow, because we only receive 2 trucks a month, and in order to be able to provide the amount of service that we have to give to the mixed beverage, I have to make amply sure that I have plenty of inventory in stock to fill orders, especially during holiday periods. Some of that overflow, because of the lack of warehouse space, has overflowed into the showroom. And I kind of liken that now to us looking sometimes like a Georgia, South Carolina liquor store in terms of the clutter and the boxes out on the floor. I really don't like that. I like a nice, clean, clear pathways for people to be able to shop, no clutter. That has provided a challenge. It's also been a challenge to be able to have enough room to pack the orders as well as receive shipments in the warehouse because of lack of storage. Does that answer all your questions?
Except I want you to clarify something, Kevin.
Okay.
Mixed beverage means the big trend is.
Oh, sorry. I'm used
to
to talking to the board. I'm used to talking to the ABC board. The mixed beverage is actually our service to the bars and restaurants in town, of which we have roughly about 30 accounts. And that does include the clubs as well. Highlands Country Club, Wildcat, Calisaja, Highlands Falls. Those 4 clubs, even outside the city limits, we service those as well.
But I was asking about, you're going to have to get into the refrigeration.
Oh, yes, yes.
People who want to just buy a mixed drink in a can.
About a year and a half ago, actually, it was probably about 2 to 3 years ago, the ready to drink RTDs started taking over the liquor industry by storm. This is the pre-made cocktails that are actually spirit based. We're not talking about the little malt beverages that you can buy at the grocery stores. These are actually the ones that are spirit based. That has become a huge part of our market with the newer generations. And also COVID kind of spearheaded this because people have figured out by being locked in that they would rather have these pre-mixed beverages. So about a year and a half ago, the ABC Commission finally approved the use of us being able to put coolers in the stores, which we actually installed our first cooler right around Labor Day. And that has really taken off beyond what I thought it would. So that market continues to grow, and it's only going to continue to grow. We have a 3-door cabinet right now, and I foresee probably in the next 3 to 5 years, with the way the market is going, because more and more companies are starting to get into this, we're going to need more and more coolers. I've actually had to take out a space that we used to reserve strictly for the North Carolina monthly sales in order to accommodate this 3-door cooler. So I've had to extract one thing that was very popular in the store, being able to put all our sale items in one area, and replace that with a cooler now because of the demand.
So what's the square footage you have there now?
Which I'm sorry?
What's the square footage of the store now?
It's about 42 to 4,400 square feet, of which there's roughly about 2,200 square feet that is showroom.
And what is the fire department?
Last account I had was it somewhere around 11,000. But the fire department has been added on to so many times, it is so chopped up. It's not going to be, it's from the way I look at it is it's not really going to be beneficial to one. It's more beneficial to one party than it is to try to subdivide it because it is so chopped up. Because you have part of the building that was built in the 40s, part of it that was built in the 60s or 70s, part of it that was built in the 2000s. There's different elevation changes. It's quite chopped up. It's going to take some doing to get it to work for any retail purpose, but it is doable.
I would say I'm not disagreeing that the ABC needs more space. I'm saying that is a town building and we need to make sure we use it to maximize the best, highest and best use for the town of Highlands. And I agree that we shouldn't make that decision tonight without some thought about it. I mean, this is the first we've heard about it. We know that we knew that we were going to be having to decide what that building was going to be. And I don't know enough about it and how chopped up it is and how usable it is for 1, 2 or other tenants.
Yeah.
So
Which tenants are in there and what could be.
I know.
But I mean, yeah, but it also could
I
be
don't wanna
completely
just-
torn down. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Well, they said they had their leases not up until 28, so. I don't
Well, but
think-
we have the option of
Early.
of getting out of that
Oh,
early.
I understand that, but there's no
Right.
rush on you getting out right now, and that we could take a month or two to decide
Right.
to just actually take a look at it.
But even letting them bring in their architect and just looking at the building and coming up with the concept of
That-
what they can propose.
That's what we're asking for right now. We're not asking for a
Oh,
final.
I
We're
thought
at-
you were asking
No,
for.
no, I'm sorry. I didn't make myself clear. We're asking for a go-ahead that we can do preliminary work so that we can come back with a more definitive plan. When we work with architects or contractors and whomever, when we discuss this, and we get a concept of what we need, what we can use, we have been, Kevin, myself, and other board members have been there and conceptualized how we would utilize this space. Whether or not, it sounds like, okay, we got 4,000, we want to go, close to triple. Well, that's not the case because our 4,000, we're constrained. So, we probably need at least 50% more space or more where we are. And as Kevin indicated, there are more things as far as retail sales that are likely to come on board at ABC that would necessitate this. Are we going to need all of it? We don't know, but when we need the permission to go ahead and get with an architect or somebody in which we've got some plans with to see this is how we can utilize it. Then once we find out how it can be utilized, then we would come back with more definitive. We'd come back with with a rendering of what it would look like and so on.
Yeah, I don't think.
Okay, if it's just still in the planning stage.
Yes.
I don't think you need.
Let me just say this.
I don't think you need like our permission for y'all to do that because that's your budget to do that. I think you're welcome to do that on your own. As far as we're concerned, we're open to the idea of possibly moving it. I think what you're trying to find out is whether we possibly look at
We
being
don't,
attentive to allowing y'all to take.
we don't
that
have any
into
plans
consideration.
for it
We don't have
right
plans,
now,
yeah.
but that doesn't mean that we might not if we
Yeah.
thought about it. We
Right.
haven't thought about it.
Well, I asked for money to be included in this year's budget to work on a plan for the property, but that didn't make it.
Well, we don't need a plan, we just need a concept.
Well-
We just need a,
We're saying the same thing. Yeah,
yeah. Just to say, what would we use it for
right.
as the highest best use for the town of Highlands?
That's
And maybe
exactly.
it's the ABC store.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not. And maybe the ABC store only needs to do part of it. And if it's part of it, then we need to figure out what to use the other part of it.
Well, that's what we're
Brian's
trying
right,
to do.
it
We're
might be
trying to
cheaper.
we're trying to
Set the parameters.
satisfy the unknown. We need to come back with something more definitive because I understand what you're saying and it makes a lot of sense. We don't know. we don't know either. We're conceptualizing what we think would work based on what we are, but we need direction to say we need to go forward with at least stage one, and that stage one is to come back with preliminary plans.
Well, I think all we can tell you is that we don't have any plans for it right now, so go ahead.
Okay.
Is that about it?
Yes, and let me just say, as the mayor, the ABC board members came and talked to me and Josh. And we got to this point and they looked around. We said, you know, before we go any further, or y'all go any further, you need to share this with the board and get their feedback. And it's just a preliminary.
But, you know,
Just an idea what they're looking at.
we really need to talk about this in the budget workshop and that property and what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. and
Right,
the
we
whole
have
thing.
the playhouse, they'll be moving out in May,
Mhm.
so there probably needs to be a feasibility study done on the entire, property
Right.
Campus.
at that time.
And Brian's right, it might be cheaper just to have a green field and start over again.
Mr. Mayor, I have a concern that there's more to be considered here than just square footage and building. I think the location, as far as the town is concerned, as far as revenue from the ABC is concerned going forward, I think the ABC store in its current location is a great location, despite square footage. You got parking, you've got other stores around. If they move to the current fire department, there's going to be no spontaneous buying. I mean, nobody's going to walk out of Bryson and say, oh, let's go over here and buy something to go with our mixer that we just bought or whatever. I mean, it's going to be a destination. And I'd be, as far as monetary return is concerned, I'd really be interested in seeing the difference between when the ABC store went from the fire department or went from what's now the police department over to Bryson's Plaza, the Highlands Plaza, and see what the level of interest and the level of monetary increase was or decrease.
I asked the same question that you're addressing at this point, and according to Kevin, and I'll let him confirm that, the ABC store is a destination. The ABC store generally does not get people who have bought a dozen eggs and then they get a fifth of liquor. Type situation. Well, I said generally. Okay.
You got to make eggnog somehow.
Yeah. So
They did it, too.
I think we're all on the same page.
So the page is proceed with your
Proceed, yeah,
proposal.
yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda will be financial matters, and that's going to be budget amendments, and I'll turn it over to Josh Ward.
So the first budget amendment is for the Dog Mountain project engineering report. As you recall, the town was awarded 100% funding for the Dog Mountain water line replacement project through the state fiscal recovery fund, which are funds allocated to the state from the American Rescue Plan Act. And the first step was to select an engineering firm through the request for qualifications process. Withers Ravenel and WK Dixon were the two firms who submitted. The town has worked with both firms in the past and both are well qualified. The town staff selected Withers Ravenel due to their being familiar with the project, as they were the firm that assisted the town in securing the grant funding. So the next step in the process is to complete and submit the engineering report to the North Carolina Division of Water Infrastructure. Attached is an agreement to conduct the report from Withers Ravenel. Once the report is complete and submitted, the town will contract with Withers Ravenel to complete the bid and design package for submittal. So the recommendation is to approve the agreement with Withers Ravenel to proceed with the engineering report. And as you got that in the packet, it's $50,000 to proceed with that step.
Move to approve.
Second.
Did it have a time frame in there, Josh? Or did I miss it?
Time frame.
time frame that they would have it?
So 120 days, 90 to 120 days. He said they'll probably have it completed quicker than that.
Okay.
The timeline and the schedule for each of these through the grant process were very quick. So what's happened is December 1st was the required submittal for this report. Nobody has been able to get their ducks in a row in order to get those reports in. So they've had to file extensions, which they've already done with 3 or 4, Withers Ravenel has, that they're working with. A lot of the information didn't come out for months after they issued the grant. And so basically they'll file for an extension, ask for 90 to 120 days. They'll have it done before then and they'll have it submitted. He said probably what will happen is they will have it for 6 to 8 months is what they're looking at now before they approve that engineering report. He said this project is very straightforward. It'll be easy. There shouldn't be any environmental issues or anything like some of the larger projects that they're seeing. So it should go through, but it's just the waiting period because they have so many, applications right now coming through. He said that what would be the best is once they start with this, is they will get us an agreement here in the next few weeks and go ahead and get that to us for the bid and design document.
Okay, so we'll be ready to move on.
Let the town go ahead and approve that. They'll give a quote for that. The town can approve that maybe even in January at that meeting. Then everything will be ready to go. When they get the approval back from the engineering report, they can start on immediately. Now, a lot of folks from the Dog Mountain area has called and said, when is this going to start? Just so everybody knows, if the timeline is followed, it's going to be 2024, probably May or June of 2024, according to the schedule before this will start construction.
Do you need any easements, Josh, or land
No.
acquisition? Okay.
We will not.
All right.
So that'll quicken.
And we have a motion
That's
on
why I
the
just
floor.
wanted to know where we were in this whole
Yes, sir.
timeframe then.
Commissioner Ing has the motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Signify by saying aye. Thank you very much. Now, the next budget amendment, meter reader replacement vehicle. Josh.
So we had, our meter reader had a Jeep that was 10, 11 years old. We've actually had 2 of these Jeeps, a little 2-door Wrangler. The other, the water plant had, and it went out on us. We had to replace that, if you recall, sometime back with a Toyota Tacoma. This Jeep was doing the same thing. It laid down on us. The cost to repair that was not feasible, being that it was 11 years old. So Lamar was able to somehow find a little extended cab Tacoma, Toyota Tacoma pickup that would work well for the meter reader. We were able to secure that. We've already gotten that. Basically, this budget amendment is kind of an after effect. It was emergency replacement of that. So the meter reader had something to drive.
So moved.
We will.
Second.
Go ahead. Okay. We will be coming back to you, is what I want to say. We will be coming back to you to surplus those 2 Jeeps, probably in January.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Thank you. And I will just say one thing, and we're not going to get into it tonight, but some of these lightweight types of vehicles, I think in the long run, we should start looking at possible electric vehicles for small.
We don't have a charging station.
Huh?
We don't have a charging
But
station.
we could put one at the plant every night, just plug it in.
We
and
got
go.
one more budget amendment.
Okay, we did. All right, but Josh.
So the budget amendment that was added, if you recall, in this year's budget, there was $25,000 allocated to the police department shed. They were housed the box truck that they have. It's actually starting to have some issues just due to being out in the rain. Had to do some repairs. Also, the RTV is out in the rain. We initially wanted to do a concrete slab underneath, but the quotes were a little too high. We thought, well, we'll start out, get the shed built, build it to where it can be enclosed later, and then we'll come back and pour the slab. Well, when doing the estimates, there is rock right under the surface. So to pin the footers to the rock, it was going to cost a tremendous amount of money to pour that footer high enough to support the structure. So Seth Smith has looked at the project. He's got some quotes out to us, and he said it would be better to go ahead and pour the slab to anchor the structure to it now. So I had him do a figure for that, And actually, we had it in there and I gave Rebecca the wrong quote. It would be a $19,000 addition. The total that he's given is a $43,979 for the structure and the porch slab. It will be ready to go in the future. If they want to enclose it, it'll be ready to go for that. But this will get that box truck and RTV out of the weather.
So it's an additional 19,000?
19,000.
So is that project started yet at all?
No, it hasn't. But he has everything basically in line, the materials he wants, the structure itself. We've already looked at, design and everything. He's got all that together. He's met with John Crow to do the concrete. So we had to get this budget amendment approved first before we proceed.
I wanted to try to keep it in the fire station while we're trying to figure that all out.
Right.
And we weren't sure if it was high enough or not, but we thought it would be, didn't we?
So I move we approve the budget amendment to pour the slab for the shed for the police department equipment.
Okay,
Second.
second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Have one opposed. Commissioner Hayes.
What'd you
You're
say,
opposed
Vice?
to-
Yeah,
You voted opposed to?
yeah, I agree with Commissioner Hines.
Okay, so we have 3 for and 2 against. Would you like to amplify your?
I agree. We've got a fire department that's about to be empty. We've got a box truck that's about to decay away. There's plenty of room for the four-wheeler. Four-wheel
Amen.
box truck.
Yeah.
And we've got a-
Once we get the trucks out, we can park the box truck in there till we get to the new shed.
Well, and that's about to happen, is it not?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. Our last item, closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3. Attorney-client privilege, little bear pen tree cutting. Do I have a motion that we go into closed session?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand, please. Thank you. We're in closed session.